Welcome, sales professionals and aspiring sales professionals, to Sales Trainers List and Sell online. And here we hope to keep the subject matter, I guess, categorized somewhat, but also move around and get you. I mean, it's a funny thing. One of the things my dear father, who likes to extend my thought processes, said to me many years ago, especially given that I was selling or moving out of a perfectly legitimate business into the training realm, and he just said, "What on earth are you doing this for?" And I said, "Well, I love it. I'm interested in it." And then he went on to say, "Why on earth would you leave a perfectly legitimate business and move into the space of another one?" I said, "Well, because the whole idea of it is another mountain to climb, and it appeals to me." Anyway, he then said to me, "What on earth are you trying to get these people to do?" And I said, I'm trying to get them to think. So of all the things that we share on here and you experience out in the field, the one thing that I'll never, ever prevent you from doing or discourage is the idea of you thinking through the process of being somewhat creative and getting to understand what's going on. You know, I'm seeing in the last couple of weeks, a lot of people are talking to me about the fact that there's reluctance for property sellers to get their properties on right now. And, the general consensus is the perception, which is the subject matter today, perception, which is obviously has a correlation to marketing, is that properties will sell relatively easily. I find this fascinating when you consider that most economies worldwide have taken a battering, and certainly in the Western world have been propped up by their governments. So it just goes to show, or just goes to say, that as the true effect of those economies augurs in, it has to have an adverse effect on the real estate market. Take away the stimulus, take away the earnings, have higher unemployment, have a change in fiscal policy, which is that value variable that we can't control. And invariably, you're going to have lots of properties come on the market. I think there's going to be fewer buyers for them. And as we were talking last week, we're probably headed for an oversupply. Yet, I still see salespeople saying in prospecting, how do we get people on? And it's the same thing. You're sitting there, how on earth am I supposed to get these sellers to bring their properties on? And I say it's the same thing that I said to my father many years ago when he said, how on earth do I expect all of the salespeople that I'll be coaching, teaching, training, how do I expect them to get what I get so very quickly? And as I said to my father, I said, just one at a time. And I say the same thing to you. It's a one at a time experience. And what you can work on, you get a choice, right? The one at a time thing kind of contradicts what I say. When I talk about prospecting, I say that, the key to successful prospecting, if we're talking about that context, is evidently marketing. Yet, so often we think it's about reaching out to one person, creating one relationship at a time, putting them into a database, having those bloody ridiculous sales funnels, which I'll talk about in a couple of weeks. The whole idea is you shovel, you're open for inspection inquiry in the top of that funnel, you shovel all of the people that are calling off the net, people that are calling off signs, people that are telephoning the office, and you hope that it'll funnel down and out will pop listings down the other end into one of those pipelines, active pipes and all that sort of stuff they talk about. I'm not saying this doesn't work. It does work. It just doesn't work remarkably well. There is no greater tool that you can utilize in your marketplace that extends across the range of things that you do as a real estate agent that is more powerful than marketing. In the context of prospecting, if you can create a perception of presence that exceeds that of your competition, invariably that perception becomes a reality for the people that you are trying to attract, and they put you on the shopping list. So in the marketplace, and I'll say this over and over and over again, I prove it not just, in a largest manner. I prove this on a one-on-one basis with people that I work with on here. I prove it, in the context of sales trainer and sales trainer mentor, which everything about this particular facet of the real estate profession is traction. It's about building market share. It assumes you already have listings coming in. It's understanding when you have a listing come in and you have a open for inspection, that is the conduit, that is a voice that you have in your marketplace, and the message that you send down that conduit. So the message you send down by way of the open for inspections that you hold, the message that you send down by who you invite to that open for inspection, all of that perception becomes a reality in practice that actually then determines your outcomes. You see, you just can't speak to the number of people in a one-on-one arrangement that you can in and around marketing. So if you understand how marketing works, you then have to make a conscious decision to become a marketer. And what a marketer does is, a marketer doesn't look at what is. A marketer is constantly looking at what could be. So last week I was looking at Real Estate Rockstar with a real estate salesperson who's quite accomplished. They're doing roughly around 30 sales a year, which is not to be shunned at. That's 3 a month. The dollars that come from that are fairly good. Wanted to bring in some assistance, so wanted to alleviate the necessity to be out there prospecting. And so I've got 2 people now in, some people call it an EBU. I call those things defective business units. But I said to them, where do you want to go with this? To which they responded, they're looking at me, waiting for me to answer it. I said, look, we're going to drive this vehicle. We have to understand where the destination is, where we're going to drive this vehicle to. And we asked some questions. I realized that on numbers, they were looking at roughly about 5,000 or 4,500 properties. So if we, comfortably call it almost 5,000. I said, well, the capacity of those 5,000, fully understanding that it's roughly 20 sales per 1,000 is the capacity that you can expect that it will deliver, more the sales that are often made, but that's its capacity for any one individual agent. So I said, there's 100 sales there. How many of those do you want? And they just kind of said, all of them. And I said, no. I mean, how many do you really want? Is this the destination that we're going to drive it to? Is this the goal that we're just not prepared to compromise on? And they said, yeah. I said, so the very first thing we have to look at is we have a foothold in each of these respective markets. Now we have to look at how we build the presence in those markets. We have to look at the message that we are sending down the conduits that are available to us in that markets, fundamentally the position of the properties, the signboards that we put out, the open for inspections that we carry on with, all of the things that we do around the regenerative prospecting process, which is leveraging off one listing, turning it into 2, turning those 2 into 4. Now, I know many of you, and I can even see from the names here, have heard me talk about this before, but it's not a novel thing. It's not, you creating presence in the marketplace is not just something that you do early on to get somewhere. It's something that you are looking that once you've established it, we do this by way of foothold. Understand when you're trying to break a market, when you are looking to get a foothold in that market, it is a terrific grind to actually get to the point where you are seen in that marketplace. And then when you compare with others, that profile is deemed to be prolific or suitably prolific enough to cause people to call you in. So once you get there, you've got to work on it. When you've got listings, you have to be conscious of the perception that you are creating at every stage. And whether or not you're conscious of this or not, you are still creating perceptions. Yeah. So people are reading what they're seeing and doing around you the way they see the play unfold. So it stands for you as a real estate agent to figure out how to nurture that perception so that you look, or the message that you're trying to convey becomes their reality and they bring you in. So marketing is the most powerful tool that you could possibly ever garnish in the real estate profession, definitely in the context of prospecting. And so it is that we want to look bigger than we actually are. We understand that sellers don't come into real estate offices prior to signing agency agreements, but they're out there in the field. If they're out there in the field, and we know for a fact in terms of traction, that in the immediate vicinity of any listing that we win, there's going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 people that are in a state of gestation and looking at selling within the next 12 months. So if we nurture that perception and we create a communication system that allows us to identify them, yep, and they see our products. So really on prospecting, the whole notion is founded around this. First and foremost, creating that presence, whatever you have to do. So something I'd be saying to you right now, just checking in, if you're struggling around listings, how's your presence in your marketplace? What can you do to instantly lift that presence in the marketplace that you are coveting? Now, I can tell you almost straight away, you can up the number of open for inspections that you're running. Sure, some of you might even be sat in the middle of lockdown and you're saying, well, I can't run an open for inspection. That doesn't mean that you that you are prohibited from physically putting, I guess, pointer boards out in the marketplace. That doesn't mean that you can't open the properties on a one-on-one arrangement and promote it as such. That doesn't mean that you can't have physical signage in the marketplace. It also doesn't mean if you're seeing each time one of your competitors puts a signboard up, you should be tripping over your toes to drop the PMBX around that sign. What is the PMBX? Put the message in the box, a great Carl Wallinger song from World Party. That's what it's named after. We called it Put the Message in the Box because we're talking about put it into the letterbox. And what is that just listed card? It's quite simplistic. It says your competitors listed a property. We know that's going to arouse the attention of the active property sellers within a definitive radius. If we drop a for sale board on one side that says, looking for buyers, we're seeking buyers, and it says, neighborhood search, we have buyers that are keen for property in and around Jones Street. So the people that live there, they know that street. Yep. They're active. They're looking at selling. They cannot help themselves. They will call the agency, get in touch with you. The first question they'll have for you is, who have you got and how much are they spending? This creates the connection. If that's coupled with a dose of the for sale sign going out there, the for sale card, say once a month, once every 6 weeks, you're just doing a general blanket drop. This is fantastic. It's raising presence. It's not causing dormant property owners to come to you around market appraisals, but it is allowing the active property sellers to see this. Fascinating. I'm talking to a guy in Melbourne at the moment who I've been working with for some time now, and they have listings like you would not believe. There's something like 15 listings they've got actively that they're working in an area on the way down to the Mornington Peninsula. And he gets the idea of presence. And yesterday we just discussed a pure and unadulterated plan to just, reinvigorate the presence, because we know that the listings beget listings, and it's the presence and that perception of presence that is making it work. So that's one area that you can look at. Marketing is the key to successful prospecting. Its currency, and I really have to get this point across, is not dollars and cents. You've got to feel quite powerful against your competition. If they're looking at marketing in the context of advertising, if they're looking at, getting owners, getting other sellers, getting their sellers to pay for advertising, vendor paid advertising, goodness me. I mean, if property sellers were aware of this acronym, if they knew that we hold training sessions purely designed to figure out how to get vendors, which of course is property sellers, to pay for the advertising, I think they'd be horrified. So you need to understand that marketing is not advertising per se, it's a component of marketing, but it is merely, advertising is not much more than the conduit by which you get the marketing message out. So you can have a really big ad, and if it's a shit ad, all it's doing is amplifying the fact or turning people off. It can actually destroy the perception. If the perception that you're trying to create is not one that's conducive to people wanting to do business with you, then putting it into a big ad is only going to reverse the polarity of the results that you're going to get. So what we talk about, marketing in the context of listing presentations, and this needs to be understood when we're talking to an owner, is about creating the perception and enhancing the perception of the property. This is why I'm absolutely floored. I'm fascinated as to why this whole concept of off-market listings got out. I'm absolutely certain if I was out there and I was up against an agent that was encouraging people to put the property up for sale in an off-market fashion, purely to try to save money on, as they call it, the marketing, but in reality, what they're trying to save money on is the advertising, I would eat these people for breakfast. You see, you need to show the example of perception and how it works. If you have a poor photograph of a property and a very small ad that's not put together very well, and the photographs are not done professionally, compare that with one that is high-end professionalism, that looks the part, and you contrast those two to an owner, but ask them to look at those two advertisements in the capacity of a buyer, and they'll soon realize that as a buyer, they want their perception maximized. And if you fail to enhance the perception of the property to any prospective buyer, you seriously run the risk of devaluing the property, despite the fact that they've been to and seen the property in reality. It's not hard to unwittingly lower that perception in the marketplace. So just, you've got to look at this in the right context. So what are we doing with marketing? We're explaining what marketing is. When we get out there on a listing presentation, we need to explain to them that it is an investment and it's not a cost. We need to present it in an unbiased context from the buyer's perspective. You see, what salespeople need to do is to allow their customers to change their perspective in order to see the value. It's the way that, right now in your marketplace, if you're struggling to get sellers to call you in to want to list the property, it's not their fault. Don't place the frustration on them. What I say is you need to put the frustration, out on the table, get fascinated with it, and engineer a way to change that perception inside the marketplace? Who is saying they are the professional with your advertising? When you're advertising yourself in that marketplace, when you're advertising yourself around trying to procure customers, who is doing the chest beating? Are you telling people how good you are? Are you telling people about your successes? Or are you garnering the voice of your past and present clients, utilizing that, pushing that into your marketplace and letting them do the talking on your behalf? This changes the entire perception out there in your marketplace. And I push to get real estate agents to properly understand this. You know, you've got to be able to run those analogies. One of the ones that I always was trying to get across to property sellers is that the perception is vastly removed from the reality. One of the stories I used to love telling was the one of being the jogger. And I'd say, you know, imagine you live next door to me, God forbid. And I would basically say to them, you're out there watering your garden. I come out each morning in what appears to be a jogging suit. I do a couple of stretches, say good morning to you, turn left out of my front gate and break into a jog and disappear around the corner. About half an hour, 40 minutes later, I come up the other side of the street, what appears to be a lather of sweat, do a couple of stretches again, bid you good day, pop inside. I do this every single day. If you were having a conversation with one of our neighbors across the street or across a fence and the subject of my physical well-being came up, what would you say? They say, oh, he's just a superstar, exercises every day. I said, now, in truth, if what happened was when I turned the corner, I went back to a walk, went down to the local cafe, had a couple of cups of coffee, even lit up a cigarette, sat there, read the newspaper, finished this up, then sprayed myself with some water to continue with the whole charade, come back around the other side and just went on with it. Now, leave my mental well-being aside. What would you now say about my physical well-being? They say, well, you're just a walking disaster area. So, but if you never knew that, your perception would always be that I was physically fit. This context works the same inside of real estate. And you need to understand how to manipulate the perceptions. And so long as you are fully intent of making that perception a reality, so don't go into a marketplace and try to look like you're a player or look like you're number one or look like you're providing a product that is leveraging and protecting value, and then evidently don't do it later on. That's not creating a perception, that's creating a deception. And that's a massive, massive difference. Then finally, the last context I wanted you to start thinking about, which I will carry on with this the next time that we talk, certainly in preparation around the listing presentation, is, and it seems to me, and it's the only reason I bring it up is because it just started to come up to me this week, and that is understanding how perceptions, pardon the pun, are perceived by the person that you're sending that message out to. So often we look at communication, we look at how we communicate a message, how we communicate that perception, just from our perspective. We only see it our way around. Now, I really want to impress upon you that you need to understand that people process information differently in different ways. Now, there's some broad-based stuff on this, and I am going to expand on it later as I break into expanding on client styles. But understand this in a simplistic fashion to begin with. You have three, I believe, types of ways that people have prolifically that causes them to arrive at decisions. The first is what I call a thinker. A thinker is somebody who can only make a decision when they're given all of the facts. they give themselves away. You can almost tell them almost straight away that they are a thinker and they utilize it, or they process information this way, because when they arrive at their answer, they'll prefix it with, here is what I think. You can't say to a thinker, you can't give them an estimation. So if they ask, for argument's sake, what are your fees and charges? You can't say, oh, around 3%, which means that you'd probably be paying about 35,000. They want to know whether that is 35,000 as a fee, or is it 36,542 or whatever. But the more precise you are, with the facts, the easier it is for them to arrive at a decision. And the comforting thing is they will make instant decisions if they're given the facts. In the absence of the facts, they won't make those decisions. Why am I telling you this? Well, when you're looking at a whole range of things, even in prospecting, I've got people saying to me, oh, these people won't come on the market. If I know I'm talking to a thinker, I give them a whole lot of evidentiary facts that cause them to want to then bring the property on the market. So right now, I can talk to them about the fact that unemployment statistically is rising. I can make it very clear that fiscal policy is bound to change and we're headed for a credit squeeze. I can then give them evidence that this is going to evidently cause more property to come on the market and there just aren't enough buyers for them. This in turn is going to drive prices down. If I give them that factual information, they want to put the property on the market like yesterday. Especially if I can then show them that on facts, they could sell the property themselves, they could introduce a buyer, but they would never be able to leverage and protect the value, basically because what I do and say to them are things that they could never do and say on their own behalf. So for professions, thinkers usually are analytical types, accountants, actuaries, chemists, a lot of school teachers are, for me, they were a great frustration until I understood how they process information. The moment that I did, because I'm not a thinker, I'm not given over to facts and figures. So I started to look at this, and I really only in arriving at a decision, not in other areas. But in any respect, I looked at it, and as soon as I understood it, I realized that all I've got to do is give concise information, and I get the decision that I want. Similarly, the next one was a feeler. Feelers they're almost a polar opposite. They're not interested in understanding or the facts. They're more concerned with the instinctive feel about you, how they feel about you. So, and again, they will give it away by saying, here's how I feel. The reality is that feelers need about 24 hours to process information. So if I was talking to an incumbent property seller about how they feel, I would talk more about the destination, their motive, even though most of them I'm encouraging that motive-centric thing anyway. And I would ask them how they feel about being stuck where they are as opposed to where they want to go. I allow them the time to arrive at the decision. I focus more on the relationship and how they feel about me. And then once I've established that empathetic disposition, that empathy without sympathy, I now have the communication channel opened up and they will listen to my advice, and then I can get the property on the market. The third one is a knower. Again, with a knower, you can't miss a knower. They're easy to identify. They typically finish your sentences for you. So in prospecting, if you're talking about, them coming onto the market, they go, oh, no, I don't want to buy something without finding something first. And they're kind of like ahead of the game. You hadn't even mentioned it, but you still need to actually let them have their head, but then sometimes try to get them to slow down and see the opportunity that exists. So knowers make all of their decisions impulsively and then typically regret those later. So what you've got to do is not try to actually force against whatever decision they're making right now, but steadfastly, very slowly drop in the what ifs and the how ifs, and what if you make this bad decision right now to move it ahead. So just jumping back to feelers. Feelers typically for vocation types, they're very artistic types, musicians, a lot of some teachers like drama teachers, that sort of stuff, even a lot of history teachers, because that has a direct correlation to storytellers and all that sort of thing. So they need the 24 hours. Well, with the knowers, they make impulsive decisions, but if that impulsive decision isn't coming, there's no way you're going to change that. But what you can do is just go out the back and try a different angle of communication to get them on board. So just understand, the message I have for you this morning is to become a marketer, to understand that just about everything that occurs in the business space, especially as it relates to sales, is founded around marketing, is founded around the ability to create perceptions that then become realities. As a marketer, this is what I'm totally focused upon all the time. I never say what is, I'm constantly saying what could be. Even right now, looking ahead, one conversation I had with an agent yesterday was, we're going to move into oversupply. And their words to me were, well, what do we do about that? I said, prepare yourself. You need to list everything. Don't get into any arguments on price or value. Just get all the listings on board. Because my discussion with them went like this. I said, look, if you can get, say, somewhere between 15 and 30 listings, you're on the way. And they said, that would just be a noose around my neck. I said, no. I would rather have 30 overpriced listings than 10 well-priced listings. And they looked at me like I was mad. I said, well, here's the thing. Because those 30 overpriced listings most likely are motivated because their motive is such that it's caused them to overprice it. And in any event, you can't make 20 to 25 sales out of 10 well-priced listings, but you can make 20 to 25 sales out of 30 overpriced listings. My name is Mark Dwyer. You can reach me at Mark with a K at salestrainer.com.au, or you can telephone me on +61 410 592 165. Thanks for listening. I hope that you don't mind me jumping around with content, but I'm really trying to make it current. Your feedback on what we talk about here will drive the subject matter each week. And I hope to see you back as I stimulate your thinking about what's going on in the current real estate market and how you can look to embrace the protocol of traction and build your market share. Turn adversity into opportunity. Bye for now.